Every morning, Helen dreaded getting out of bed. At 73, even the simple act of standing up sent a sharp ache through her knees. Walking to the kitchen felt like a slow battle, each step reminding her of how much life had changed. She used to stroll in the park with her grandkids, dance in the living room to her favorite tunes, but now just bending down to tie her shoes was a struggle. She had convinced herself that this pain was simply part of getting older. Everyone her age dealt with it, right? Doctors shrugged, friends offered sympathy, and painkillers became part of her daily routine. But deep down, Helen feared this was the beginning of the end. Less movement, more discomfort, and a life growing smaller with each passing day. Then one afternoon, while scrolling through videos, something caught her eye. It wasn't promising a miracle or a fancy treatment, just 5 simple daily habits. Easy things, nothing overwhelming. The video claimed these habits had helped countless older adults move freely again, even those who had suffered for years. Skeptical but desperate, Helen decided to give it a shot. What happened over the next few weeks shocked her. Her stiff joints began to loosen, her mornings got easier, and for the first time in years, she took a long walk without stopping in pain. It wasn't magic, it was movement, it was nourishment, it was support, and it all started with 5 tiny changes she could do from her own home. If you've ever felt like pain was stealing your freedom, Helen's story might be just what you need to hear. Because maybe, just maybe, the key to getting your life back isn't as far away as you think. 1. Gentle daily stretching. Helen had always loved her mornings. There was a time when she'd wake up early, wrap herself in a soft robe, and walk barefoot through the garden, sipping tea as the sun crept over the horizon. But at 73, those golden mornings had slowly slipped away. Now, when she opened her eyes, the first thing she felt wasn't peace, it was pain. Her knees, once strong and dependable, had become stiff and uncooperative. Just getting out of bed felt like pushing against cement. She would swing her legs over the side and sit there, staring at the floor, trying to gather the courage to stand. Each step was a negotiation with pain. I guess this is just old age, she told herself. But that changed after a conversation with her doctor. Helen, he said gently, you don't need pills or pricey treatments. You just need to move, slowly, every day. Start with stretching. Stretching? She was skeptical. How could something so small fix something that felt so big? Still, she was desperate. So the next morning, Helen stayed in bed a few extra minutes and began with something simple. She slowly bent and straightened her knees, feeling the stiffness resist her at first, then soften just a little. The following day, she added a seated hamstring stretch. A few days later, she began using a chair for balance as she gently pulled her heel toward her backside, stretching her quads. And something incredible began to happen. Her mornings didn't hurt quite so much. The stiffness that once clung to her joints like rust began to melt away. Her steps grew lighter. She could stand up from her chair without bracing herself. By the end of the second week, she found herself walking out into her garden again, slowly, carefully, but without the fear of falling. The secret wasn't force, it was patience. Slow, steady movements, holding each stretch for 30 seconds. Breathing deeply, giving her muscles time to wake up. She didn't need special equipment, a gym membership, or even to leave her bedroom. Just a few quiet moments each day. That was all it took for Helen to rediscover something she thought she'd lost forever, her freedom to move and the joy that came with it. Number 2, strengthening exercises. Helen had started to feel stronger since adding stretching into her morning routine, but there was still something missing. Her knees were less stiff. Yes, but they still felt fragile, as if the smallest misstep could throw everything off balance. She hesitated at curbs, avoided stairs, and always looked for handrails. Fear had crept into her movements, stealing her confidence. Then, one afternoon, during her regular checkup, her doctor leaned forward and said, Stretching is helping, but now it's time to build strength. Your knees need more than flexibility. They need support. Helen blinked. Support, like a brace? No, he smiled. Support from within, from your own muscles. That evening, Helen sat in her favorite chair and tried her first strengthening exercise. She slowly lifted one leg straight out in front of her, held it for 5 seconds, and gently lowered it back down. It felt strange. Her muscles trembled slightly, but there was no pain. The next day, she tried heel raises at the kitchen counter, lifting onto her toes and then lowering down slowly. Later that week, she added bridges, lying on her back and raising her hips to strengthen her glutes. Each movement was small, quiet, and deliberate. But after a few days, Helen noticed her legs felt steadier. When she stood, her knees didn't wobble. When she walked, her steps were more assured. She even managed the stairs one morning without clutching the railing. What surprised her most was how little time it took, just 5 to 10 minutes a day. No weights, no equipment, just her body and the determination to keep moving forward. By strengthening the muscles around her knees, her quads, hamstrings, and glutes, Helen was giving her joints the support they desperately needed. The exercises weren't intense or flashy, but they were powerful. They gave her back her confidence. And confidence, she realized, was just as important as strength. With every lift, every raise, every breath, Helen wasn't just building muscle. She was rebuilding the freedom to live on her own terms. Number 3. Anti-inflammatory diet. Helen had always believed she ate pretty healthy. She cooked at home, avoided fast food, and had her morning toast with a cup of black tea like clockwork. But despite her stretching and strengthening progress, there were still days when her knees throbbed for no clear reason, especially in the mornings. Some days were good, others frustrating. The inconsistency puzzled her. Then one rainy afternoon, while browsing a magazine at her local library, she stumbled across an article titled, "How Food Fuels Joint Pain." Curious, she read on. It talked about inflammation, hidden sugars, and something called omega-3s. Her eyes widened. She hadn't realized that what she was eating might be quietly working against her progress. Determined, Helen went home and took a good, hard look at her pantry. The crackers, the white bread, the sugary jams, they all seemed so harmless. But now, she saw them differently. That evening, she made a small change. She swapped her white toast for a slice of whole grain, added a handful of walnuts to her salad, and brewed turmeric tea instead of black. It didn't happen overnight, but within a couple of weeks, Helen noticed something remarkable. The stiffness in her knees in the morning wasn't as sharp. She didn't feel as swollen after dinner. Her energy lasted longer through the day, and she even started sleeping better. She began incorporating more leafy greens like spinach and kale, tossing in blueberries for snacks, and grilling salmon twice a week. She learned to love olive oil, sprinkled flax seeds on her yogurt, and made sure she drank plenty of water, especially after hearing that dehydration could make joint pain worse. The changes were subtle, but the effects were powerful. Her body felt more balanced, her joints more forgiving. It wasn't a diet. It was nourishment with purpose. Helen realized that food wasn't just fuel. It was medicine. And by choosing ingredients that soothed rather than stressed her body, she was giving her knees exactly what they needed to heal. Not just from the outside in, but from the inside out. Number 4, proper footwear and support. Helen had made real progress. Her mornings were smoother, her legs steadier, her energy stronger. But there was still one mystery she couldn't figure out. Why her knees always hurt more after a trip to the grocery store or an afternoon walk around the neighborhood. She was doing everything right, stretching, strengthening, eating well. So what was she missing? The answer came during a casual conversation with her neighbor, Linda, who pointed to Helen's shoes and asked, "How long have you had those?" Helen glanced down at her favorite pair of slip-ons, soft, worn, and practically molded to her feet. Years, she replied. They're comfortable. Linda shook her head gently. They're too flat. No support. You might want to have your feet measured and try something designed for joint protection. Skeptical but intrigued, Helen made an appointment at a local orthopedic shoe store. What she learned surprised her. Her arch had collapsed slightly with age, and the shoes she'd been wearing were throwing off her alignment, forcing her knees to absorb impact they were never meant to handle. She was fitted for a pair of cushioned sneakers with proper arch support, a firm heel counter, and room for custom orthotic inserts. The first time she wore them, she felt an odd combination of structure and softness, like her feet were finally standing the way they were meant to. The difference was immediate. Walks became less tiring. The stabbing knee pain after errands disappeared. She could stand longer in the kitchen without shifting her weight back and forth in discomfort. Even at home, she swapped her old slippers for supportive indoor shoes, and the nagging ache in her knees started to fade. Helen had always thought of shoes as fashion or comfort. She had never imagined they could be medicine. But now, she understood. The right footwear wasn't a luxury. It was a lifeline. With every supportive step, she was protecting her joints, aligning her posture, and giving her knees the foundation they needed to carry her forward, pain-free. Number 5. Steady, low-impact movement. Helen had come a long way. Her mornings were no longer a struggle. Her legs carried her with growing confidence, and her knees felt lighter, freer. But there was still one habit she hadn't fully embraced: movement. Not stretching, not strengthening, not a workout plan. Just simple, steady movement throughout the day. She hadn't realized how much time she spent sitting, at the breakfast table, reading by the window, watching her favorite shows, knitting by the fireplace. Hours would pass, and her knees would grow stiff again, undoing so much of her progress. It wasn't until a visit from her granddaughter, Emily, that something clicked. "Grandma," Emily said, tugging her hand, "let's go for a walk." Helen hesitated. "Just around the block," she said, unsure if her knees were up for it. But they made it, slow and steady, hand in hand. The breeze on her face, the rhythm of her steps, the warmth in her joints, it felt good. Natural. Alive. From that day on, Helen made a promise to herself: move every day. Not intensely, not forcefully, just consistently. She started with short morning walks, added gentle yoga videos in the afternoon, and on warmer days she visited the local pool for easy laps in the water. No pounding, no pressure, just smooth, fluid motion that her knees welcomed. She even set a small timer to remind herself to stand and stretch every hour. Sometimes she walked to the mailbox, sometimes she just paced the hallway. But it was enough. Enough to keep her joints lubricated, her circulation flowing, her energy up. And she noticed something else: her posture. By standing tall, engaging her core, and distributing her weight evenly, she relieved pressure on her knees with every step. Movement became her medicine. Not a chore, not an obligation, but a quiet rebellion against aging. A celebration of what her body could still do. And as the days passed, Helen no longer feared losing her mobility, because she had found the rhythm of staying free, one gentle step at a time. Conclusion. Helen used to believe that knee pain was just part of getting older, a slow surrender she had no choice but to accept. But now, as she stood in her kitchen, preparing dinner without needing to lean on the counter for support, she realized how wrong she had been. Her journey hadn't involved expensive treatments or complex routines. It had been built on small, manageable habits, a few quiet stretches each morning. Gentle exercises that asked her body to stay strong. A shift in the way she ate, not a diet, but a decision to nourish herself. Supportive shoes that gave her the foundation she never knew she needed. And perhaps most important of all, the simple act of moving, consistently, kindly, every single day. Each change was small on its own, but together they changed everything. Helen no longer feared the stairs. She walked taller, smiled more, and began planning weekend outings again. Her world had opened back up, not through some miracle cure, but through her own persistence and care. She often thought about how many people just like her believed pain was permanent. That freedom was gone. But if her story could prove anything, it was this: you're never too old, and it's never too late to feel better. Knee pain doesn't have to define your days. You have more power than you think. And it all starts with one small decision, one quiet moment, one gentle step forward. Helen took that step and found her life waiting on the other side. So what about you? Maybe today is the day you take that first small step, whether it's a gentle stretch in bed, a short walk after lunch, or swapping one meal for something more nourishing. You don't need to change everything at once. Just begin, because your knees, your body, your life, they're still yours to reclaim. And if Helen's story has shown us anything, it's that a brighter, more mobile future is possible, one simple habit at a time. Start today, and let tomorrow feel a little lighter.